Alright, I'm going to start back up. I did make it so all the buttons were together. I just didn't like the way the other one looked, but it's no big thing one way or the other. So far we've done the help, we've done the exit, we've done the clear. Well, I'm not going to keep going up. In other words, I'm not going to do the binary search first because we really should fill the array up before we do anything else. Alright, so I'm going to go to the top button, the display array one. And before I do that, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make my variable. So I'm going to create my array, in other words. All right, now I can do this. If you look on, don't type this in yet, but I can say int bracket bracket numbers equals new int, and it's going to be size 10. That's totally fine to do. But the way it's typically done is later I might want to change that number, so I'm going to come up here and say declare and initialize constant. So I'm going to come up here and say const int max equal 10, and then underneath that I'm going to change this to max. Semicolon there. So you can put those in. So I'm saying the maximum number of elements I'm going to have in my array is 10. And I'm creating an empty array. That empty array is going to have in it, all right, that empty array is going to have in it 10 integers eventually. All right. All right, so I'm down to here. I don't want to put any code in my actual button routines. Everybody hear me? I don't want to put code in the button clicks. All right, so from here I'm just going to call a routine that I have not made yet that's called fill array. I get that error because there is no fill array routine yet. There will be one in about 30 seconds. All right, in fact I'll put it, whoops, I'll put it right underneath it. Private void fill array. Now all the squigglies are gone. All right. Not a big routine, maybe 10 lines, I don't know. But I'm going to come up here and say random rand equals new random. And remember, if you do want to comment there, that is called seeding the rand. It's trying to make sure that every time we run this routine, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure we get a different set of 10 numbers, which we're about to go and fill between 10 and 100. All right. I always want to make sure, if you look up on the screen, please, I always want to make sure when I click this button right here, what should happen is I should get 10 numbers in there. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. It'll be display array, but I'm going to tell it to fill the array first. All right. And then I might end up changing these around. I don't know. I don't care right now. But the point is that when I do this, all right, and I start putting this thing in, what I really want to do is I want to make sure the way list boxes work, if I don't clear the list box, it'll put 10 numbers in, and if I click it again, it'll put in 10 numbers, then in 10 numbers, and it'll keep putting in numbers. Does that make sense? I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go back to my clear list box routine. Remember we wrote this before? We just wrote that a minute ago. And I'm going to grab that line, I'm going to cut it, and I'm just going to create a routine called clear list box. No, clear list box. And I'm going to put that right here. All right. Now you could argue and say, it's one line of code, just put it in the frickin' button. But I'm going to call it in different places, potentially in the program. So I don't want to. All right? I could have left it in there, But to me, I was always taught it is considered bad etiquette for me to be in one button and call another button's click routine. I don't want to do that. That's why I moved it. So this clear list box right here, this is the first thing I want to do after I've seeded the rand. So I want to clear, clear the list box. And that'll do it. So now I'm sure that every time I do that display the array, all right, every time I do that, the list box will clear. Now, does that make sense? All right. So now I want to generate, I want to generate 10 random numbers between 1 and 100 for the array and copy these numbers to the list box. So there's two things I want to do. I want to generate the number, all right? And when I generate the number, I want it to go right in the list box. Does that make sense? So to generate the number, pretty easy. For int LCV equals 0, LCV is less than the name of the array, which was numbers, dot length, plus plus LCV. So in other words, I want to do this 10 times. Numbers, LCV, equal rand.next 100. All right? That's going to do this. All right? Now, even if you're still typing, stop for a second. Don't type this in. I'm going to put in a line of code. Don't type it in. I could right now come in there and do this. I could say list box numbers array dot items dot add, and then put in parentheses here numbers LCV. All right? Now, I don't want you to put that in, but I want to show you something, and that is this. Notice that now when I run this, and I click, see how I'm getting different numbers? So that's working. The only thing is, I could put that there, but the reason I don't want it to, I don't want to put that there is when I click this button, I want those to be listed in ascending order. When I click this button, I want those to be listed in descending order. Why should I repeat the same code? So I'm going to take that one line of code and put it in its own routine so I can call it from 3 different places. All right? The other thing, and again, what I'm showing you, this is not that important in the main story of things, but in my list box, I'm going to click on the list box. I'm going to go to my font property, which should be in here someplace. And right now, it's at 8.25 points. I'm going to make it about, I don't know, 14 and bold. Let's see what that looks like. That might be too big. I don't know. That looks better. It's a lot easier to see, at least for all of you to see now. And it can still be bigger than that, so I don't know. How about 26? That's pretty good. Again, it's not perfect, but that's pretty good. All right? All right, again, doesn't make the program run any better or worse for that matter. All right? But after I fill the array, as we said, after we generate the numbers, we want to copy these numbers to the list box. Well, let's call copy array to list box. That'll be a brand new routine that we're going to write. We'll put it right underneath the current routine. right? And that's the whole routine right there. That's it. As always, it's kind of important to save, to run it, and make sure, well, something's goofed up there. I can see that, okay. Okay, that looks like it's working. But what didn't I do here? I didn't come in at the beginning and say that list box clear. So I want to call clear list box. All right, I'm going to save and I'm going to try running it again. Now that's looking pretty good. Any questions at all on anything I've done so far? Is there anything that doesn't make sense? Now, because on your test, I tell you on your test that you'll take tomorrow, you know, when you declare certain variables, you have to make at least 3 of them, and I tell you the ones to use, either ref or out variables, just so you get practice using those. All right? So what I'm going to do, if you look up on the screen here, I'm taking for granted everybody's got this keyed in, everything we've done so far. So I'm going back to my design, and now I've done display, so I want to go to display lowest. That's the next one I want to do. All right, and I'm going to create a variable called lowest, and I'm going to assume, all right, that lowest doesn't have a value. All right, you understand what I'm saying? So now there's 2 ways I can do this. Okay, I can come in here and I can do this. I can say int lowest, don't type, just watch, please. I can come in here and say int lowest, then I can say determine lowest, which we haven't written yet, and I can say out lowest. I can do that. I get this error because we haven't written that routine yet. Or I can say int lowest equals, and I'm going to put 101 in there. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then I can make that a ref. So you can do it either way. Which way should you do it, Jeff? You can do it either way. It really and truly doesn't matter. It's a matter of personal preference. All right? I'm going to leave it like this. So why did I make that 101? That's going to make sure that as soon as I put my first number in there, it'll automatically become the lowest. Does that make sense? It'll have to be the lowest, because any number between 0 and 100 is lower than 101. All right? So I'm going to come in here, and right underneath this, I'm going to write that routine. And it's called determine lowest. And I'm going to have to say ref int lowest. All right, so notice squigglies are gone, squigglies are gone. That's a good thing. You've done stuff like this before. All I want to do is I want to bring in this. I want to bring in my for loop. All right, and I want to say if the current element, so numbers, LCV, is less than lowest, then I know I've got a new lowest. Does that make sense? right? That's going to go through my array, and it's going to grab the lowest value for me. All right? Now, I want to make sure that that worked. I want to make sure that when I click that button, I call determine lowest there, and I want to make sure it's got the lowest number in it. Well, after I get done with my for loop, I'm just going to say message box dot show the lowest number is plus lowest dot toString message box. Move this up. We got to put our title in here, so we'll say lowest number. Our buttons, we'll just have an OK here, and here we'll have for our icon, it'll be information. Again, you're to the point now, you may not agree with this, but you're sophisticated enough users that if these are your numbers, I'm making these up, 31, 8, 15, 76, 42, 41, 19, 31, 18, 73, and 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, these numbers. That after we go through that routine, when we come in here, lowest, when we started, was 101. Well, now it's 31. Now it's 8. Now it's still 8, 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 still 8. So it should come up and say the lowest number is 8. Does that make sense? The good news is, you probably have figured this out already. When we get done, we're going to do our highest. And all you got to do is change that to a greater than, make that word highest, make that word highest, then come in here and make that highest, make that highest, make that highest, and we're done with that one. It's the same exact routine, except instead of checking for the lowest number, we'll be checking for the highest number. We'll do that in just a minute here. But let's check and see if it works. So I'm going to save this, run it. All right. Display array. Now you can all see it is 8. Everybody see that? On mine at least. So display lowest. The lowest number is 8. Well, that's a good start. All right. I'm just going to exit. Now, I'm going to come over here to where we have our button display lowest, and I'm just going to copy both of these lines. You don't have to do it this way, but I'm just copying both of those lines. All right? I'm copying them to the clipboard. I'm going down to button display highest, and I'm going to say int highest, and I'm going to set that equal to -1. And then I'm going to call determine highest, and I'm going to pass in there highest. All right. And again, I'm going to grab that entire routine that I just put in here, this determine lowest, this thing, copy it to the clipboard, come down to here, paste it in, and change it from determine lowest to determine highest. Like I just told you, change all the things that say low to high. Make sure instead of less than lowest, you say greater than highest. All right, I'm going to save this. I'm going to run it again. I'm going to display it. My lowest should say 6. My highest should say, it looks like 87. So lowest 6, highest 87. So now those work. So I now have my top 3 buttons working and my bottom 3 buttons working. That all makes sense? So what's left? Well, the stuff in the middle. Sum, average, sort ascending, sort descending, and binary search. All right? I'll put this back out there so if you do want to take a quick look at it. But again, it's the exact same as the other one. Part of the reason for me wanting to show it to you like this is, again, I was talking with one of the second-year students last week, Ethan, the guy who is, hopefully, if we can get him approved to be a tutor, he'll be tutoring in here. But we were talking, and he said, I didn't know this, he's been playing guitar for about 10 years. And he said, I said, why'd you get into this field? And he said, I don't know, I just seem to gravitate towards it, and it seems to make sense. And I said, well, did you ever think it's because in your musical training, you learn pattern recognition? Because isn't that what this is? We're just using the same pattern twice. That's all we're doing. All right? So the next thing that we want to do is, well, we want to display the sum. Okay, well, that should make sense. So I'm going to say int sum. This time, let's say int sum equals 0. No, let's not give it a value. Let's do it that way. So just say int sum. And here we'll say determine. What did we call this one over here? We called it determine highest. So we'll call it determine sum. And we'll pass in as an out parameter sum. Again, we get the error because we haven't written determine sum yet. Private void determine sum out int sum. Squigglies should have gone away. They didn't. Why not? Oh, because we didn't give it a value yet. That's all. So we've used an out, and we came in here and we used refs. So you now at least should be, I'm not saying comfortable, but familiar with doing each of these. All right? Now, I'm just going to grab this. I don't need most of it, but I'm going to grab it anyway. And delete, delete, delete. Now notice what I'm getting here. It says you've got this thing called sum that was never initialized. Would you all agree it was never initialized because it was an out parameter? So I'll just come right up above here and I'll say sum equals 0. All right, now everything's gone. And I'll come right back to it, but I'm going to grab this because I've already got all that stuff. So here was our routine. Display sum. We initialize, or we declared a variable but named sum but did not initialize it, so we're passing it in as an out parameter. All right. Here, that's going to add all 10 numbers up and stick it into sum. Right there. Going to add all 10 numbers up and stick it into sum. Well, now that we've got those numbers, we put our message box that says the sum is this should say. So again, what I'm going to do is just save this and run it. I'll come right back to it. There's my numbers. Now let's just do this manually. Okay? That's 107, 205, 206, 35, what, 337, about 400, about 500. It should be real close to 600. All right, 590 something, if I did my math in my head right. Well, we know the lowest is 1. We know that's right. The highest should be 98. And that's right. And then here's our sum, 577. So it looks like that's correct too. All right. We can still clear the list box. We can exit. We can click help. So all that stuff still works. All right. Now, we're going to do the average next, but before we do, I don't know about you, but what bugs me right now is when I run this, there's nothing in there when I start. I don't like that. I want something in there when I start. So I'm going to put something in there when we start. All right? How do we do that? You all know how to do this, even if you think you don't. All right? If you look up on the screen here, what I want to do is I want to click on the form, just on a blank spot on the form. And then I want to go over to here, and in my properties window that's right here, I want to click that lightning bolt, and I want to find the form's load event, which is right here. All right? Then I'm going to double click that, and that's going to bring up the load event for the form. And all I want to do here is call, what did we call that before? I guess I goofed up. What's that? Fill array? Thank you. And call fill array. I'll know real quick whether or not that worked. Yes. You're right. And then copy array to list box. All right. Look on the screen. Put both lines in. Fill array and copy array to list box. All right. Now, if you look up on the screen here, I'm going to run this. Hey, I got numbers when I start. All right. I think that's a good thing. I think the program looks much more professional that way. All right. You may or may not agree with that. All right. So what's left? Again, if we look up on the screen here, display average, sort ascending, sort descending, and binary search. We have 4 more buttons we have to care about. Everybody with me? 4 more buttons. So I'm going to go to display average next. Now, I don't know if you agree with what I'm about to say or not, but we have no guarantee, we have absolutely no guarantee that the person, all right, we have no guarantee that the person is going to click sum before they click average. We don't know that. Right. So I'm going to come in here and type in determine sum. I'm going to call that. But when I do, remember, as it says right there, it's letting me know, hey, you need an out parameter in here or a ref or something else. Since we put it in as an out. All right. Now, if we say sum like this, is that going to work? No. Why? Because we created sum, we created it, okay, we created it in our routine here. Well, we can create another one. That's okay. We can come in here and say int sum. It's not a problem. That's fine. All right. Now, the problem is when we call determine sum, if you look on the screen, what's it going to do? It's going to also display the sum. Okay? Can we get around that? The answer is, yeah, we can actually get around that real easily. All right? And I want to just show you how we can get around that. Okay? It's going to involve adding a little bit more code, but really not much of anything. What I want to do is, when I call this thing, if I want this to print, if I want that to print, I'm going to let it know that it's the sum calling. You know, I click the sum button. You understand? But if I don't want it to print, I want it to know I clicked the average button. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, there's a lot of different ways that we can do it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to where we've got our thing here that's called determine sum, and I'm going to add another parameter here. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it option. All right, and right now, if I get off of that, see how I get an error? Okay, I'm going to say here equal 1. What is that? What is this? You just took a test on it. You answered it in the test. What? It's a default parameter, which says if I call it and I don't pass anything, it'll be a 1. Does that make sense? All right. So when I call it from here, everybody see this? I want that to print. But when I call it from here, I don't want it to print. So I'm going to call it here, and I'm going to pass in a 0. So when I call determine sum from my sum button, I didn't pass anything. When I called it from here, I passed it with a 0. You say, well, that's fine. What the hell does that do? Well, now I want to come over to here in my message box. I want to say if option equal 1, which is the default, then I do want to print this. You see that? I only want that to print if that is true. If it's not, I don't want to print that. But what I do want to print, after I determine my average, okay, is, well, we've got in here determine sum. That's fine. Now I've got to type in determine average. All right. And do we need anything for that? Well, we're going to need that sum, but we're not going to change it. So we're just going to pass in sum. All right. And then right below this, I'm going to write in private void determine average. All right. I've got to put in here sum, or give it some name. All right. Now, why does it give me that? Cannot convert from int sum to sum, because I've got to put int in front of that. All right. Now, you all know this. What I'm about to tell you, you all know this. How do you figure out the average? The sum divided by 10, correct? The problem is it's going to take an integer and divide it by an integer. So it's going to throw away the decimal portion. We don't want that. We want it to keep the decimal portion. So we're going to say here double AVG for average equals, and we're going to cast our sum to a double. And we don't want to say 10 here. We could say max, right? Isn't that 10? Okay, that's fine. And then I just want to print it out. Now, please look on the screen. I want to format that to 2 decimal places. So make sure you do that so it looks a little bit more professional. All right, that's all we're getting out of doing that. All right, I'm going to save this. I'll come right back to it, but let's run it and see if it appears to work. All right, lowest is 9. All right, good. Highest looks like it should be, if I didn't make a mistake, 81. Yep. Sum, I don't know. Let's say 600. 423. 423 divided by 10. 42.30. That looks good. All right? So we've got all that. We can clear the list box. We can do our help. And we can exit. Okay? So what we've got left is sort ascending. Guess how easy that is? Isn't that just an array.sort? And then we'll call display and fill the list box, etc. Then sort descending, where we'll do a sort and then reverse it and do that. All right, and then the binary search. So let's do the first two. Let's do the sort ascending and the sort descending. Then we'll take one more break, and then we'll come back and we'll do the binary search. And that'll put this program to rest. Now, I'm asking you this question. Is there anything that we've done? Maybe you've had a hard time keeping up with my typing, but is there anything that we've done that doesn't make sense to you? This is the time for you to ask. What you're doing tomorrow for the test isn't all that different than this. All right. So we've got our sort ascending. We'll do that one next. That's pretty darn easy. Or, well, we can do it in here. All right. And in fact, you could make the case to say, since there's only two, but let's do this. All right, we'll just call this sort ascending. Got to spell it right. No, I don't want to call it that. And I'll put that right here. And it's pretty simple. It's array.sort, the numbers array, and display array. Not that. What was it called? Or was that fill array? Fill array, I guess it is. All right. And we have to do that copy to list box. I'll tell you. Let's run it. Okay. Sort ascending. It didn't sort them. Okay? Something looks goofy right there. Yeah. Yes. Where was fill array? Maybe we only want copy array to list box. Yes. So let's see what that does. There it is. Sort ascending. Well, that looks pretty good. All right. So there it is. That's all the stuff for the sort descending, or ascending rather. So if you finish that, go down to the next one, call sort descending. These same lines, but between these two lines, you want to put array.reverse. That's it. And then we have 10 of our 11 buttons done. All right, so I'm going to go down to here. From here, I'm going to call sort descending. It'll give me an error because I haven't written it yet. All right, and I'm going to grab the one from up above, copy it to the clipboard, paste it in, array.sort. Now array.reverse of numbers and copy to list box. So now we have 10 of our 11 buttons done. The only button that does not appear right now that will not work is the binary search. Because there's a little bit more code for that one, we'll do that after a break. Now, let me just run it. There's my numbers. The lowest is 1. That looks correct. The highest is 87. Looks like that's correct. The sum, I'm going to guess that that's correct. Well, let's look. That's 100, 200, 250, 280 and 70, that's 350 something. Yeah, that looks correct. The average is 35.40. That looks good. The sort ascending looks good. Now the sort descending looks good. We didn't do the binary search yet. We can clear the list box. We can exit the array. And we can do help. So the only thing that is left to do on this program, the only thing left to do is the binary search. All right? It's 10:05. Let's just take 10. All right? We'll see if we can get, come back at 10:15. We'll see if by 10:30 or so we can finish this up. All right?